morning.
Okay, right, let's open this meeting. Deputy Mayor Dale, would you like to lead us in the Karakia, please, since Marty's not here?
Sure. Mai iti pai maunga, raro ki te tai. Mai iti awa tonga, raro ki te awa raki. Tēnei te hapori, awhiai e taratahi, whanno, haramai te toki, homie hui tāwhi.
Thank you. Are there any apologies? I haven't received any apologies. We haven't heard from Marty. Okay. Are there any conflicts of interest need to be declared for decisions? Oh, by the way, welcome to our councillors. Nice to see you here. Public forum? There are none. First item, 5.1, confirmation of our minutes held last year, 15th of November. Can I have a mover? Mayor Dale, seconded Mayor Ron. Any discussion? All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Carried. Our first item is 6.1, update on our long-term plan.
Hallelujah. Permission, could I ask Caroline to come to the table?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Right. So who wants to move this? Karen, take your report as read. Are there any highlights, lowlights, or further information you want to bring to the committee's attention?
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, councillors. It's a little bit high here. Okay, long-term plan. Things we were currently starting the audit process this week, and we have yet to receive an audit engagement and fees letter from Audit New Zealand or an audit plan. So I'm hoping that will be coming shortly. The paper outlines current timeframes, and the timeframes are reliant on external parties producing relevant information from the LTP, in particular QV valuations, and then Audit New Zealand auditing the consultation document. So there is a time frame currently in the paper where, as I just mentioned, we've started the audit for 3 weeks. We then go into reviewing the consultation document post-audit with a view to the final adoption on the 20th of March. And then public consultations commence on the 3rd of April. So that paper outlines the current timeframes. We then move into key risks around the LTP. One of the risks is around the Three Waters reform in terms of what is required, and I understand in my paper I've said that it's due to be repealed at the end of February. I believe it's been repealed this week. Mm-hmm. So at time of writing, that was the information to hand, and we're still waiting to hear what further information we will get on that and what is required. The other risks around the LTP is really the ability to deliver the required documentation with the external parties providing information to us, in particular QV, and then Audit New Zealand being able to audit the consultation document in a timely manner. The other items listed as I have written there as well.
Thank you. Jeff, you got any additional comments?
I think the biggest risk that we have at this stage is quotable value, and that's something outside of our control. With the risks that we can control, things about preparing our budget on time, preparing consultation, having the consultation with the public. I think those are the most important things that we can focus on at this stage, because quotable value will have to deal with their own challenges themselves, and I think it's a subset of the work that they're doing in the Wairarapa. So until they've completed that work, we're unable to progress that faster to them.
Deputy Mayor Dale.
Yeah, just thank you, Karen. Just comments really regarding this. I mean, you know, councils are constantly scrutinised for how we perform and how we meet our timelines. And you're right to raise this, the risks associated with external organisations who also have a job to do and a duty to do that are putting us under extraordinary pressure at this time of the year. Our councillors know how much time and energy we've put into the LTP process, but to get it signed off at the right time, we're dependent on these other organisations stepping up, and they just aren't. I mean, audit fees went up 40% last year, and they told us at the time that the reason for the significant increase was because they had to recruit more staff from overseas and pay the going rate. And only a few months later, they then still can't step up. Well, that's not it. They're making their problem our problem and charging for the privilege. And I just think it's, you know, I mean, as Jeff said, we're controlling the things we can control, but if timelines can't be met by council as a result of external organisations failing to deliver, then they have to own that risk as much as us.
It's not exactly something you can't do something about.
There is, you are correct. In terms of Audit New Zealand risk, there is the possibility so that we don't have the consultation document audited. The long-term plan document, which the council will adopt at the end of June, must be audited under legislation, but we don't have a legal requirement to audit the consultation document. It has been good practice in the past to have that document audited because it goes out to the public and it gives confirmation and assurance to the public that the numbers that we are suggesting and the budgets that we have provided have had an external auditor scrutinise them and agree that they are appropriate. In this case, I think there is some merit in considering the possibility that we continue with the audit work but not seek to have an audit opinion on the consultation document, which may free up a few weeks of time, particularly for staff and particularly between the time when we get quotable value values or between the time when we've finished all of our internal work and we go out with a consultation document. So that may be something that the committee wants to consider, is pulling back from having a formal audit opinion on our consultation document. They will still continue to do the work in the background, but it will provide a great deal more comfort and time frame for us to complete the work, given the delays of the other external parties.
If we were, as a council, to decide that that's the path we're going to go down, we could always offset and mitigate by, one, putting a formal letter through to both ministers concerned, stating our dilemma and the situation. We could also send a small delegation from Risk and Assurance to present at the Select Committee and to highlight to the government and to the Select Committee the challenges that that we are facing. Not really concerned about other councils. I'm concerned about Carterton. That lays down firmly in front of the Officer of Parliament and the ministers our dilemma and why we are, if we choose to, going to take the step we take.
Yeah.
And that's a risk management process that I think you should consider.
Clarify, right? The bill that is currently before Parliament, in clause 45 of the second schedule, it actually says consultation not need contain a report from the Auditor General. But that's only that's only effective after once the bill has been passed as an act, which is this week. And so that does alleviate, but that's one risk, which is reduced. I think the other risk is about the QV, which I think is actually a more systemic issue and has been happening for quite some time and causing a whole lot of grief for councils across the country. And now every 3 years, it's now Carterton's turn to receive that grief.
Yeah. I understand because of the landscape that all councils are trying to navigate at the moment, there's only a few councils who are choosing to go down the audited consultation document this time. So if we were to resolve to do that, and it would take a special meeting because of timing, but if we were to resolve that, we certainly wouldn't be alone. We'd be with the majority of councils,
Correct. I was at a briefing from the office, the Auditor General, not last Friday, the previous Friday. At that stage, and these were rough numbers, only 10 councils were likely to have their CD audited. That was 2 weeks ago. The ones that I'm aware of, and that's only the ones I'm aware of, is Tauranga, who went out before Christmas, and Auckland, because anyone who actually has gone out for consultation prior to this Friday legally is required to have it. There might be some dispensation in terms of if you went out before this Friday. So a number of councils who were in that position of potentially having their CD audited have pushed out their adoption date to take advantage of that. There's still a risk that the legislation might not happen this week, small risk. The other issue with the consultation document, as explained to me by Audit and the Office of the Auditor General, is the auditor will still do the majority of the work supporting, making sure that it is a valid consultation document.
Just not giving an opinion.
They won't give an opinion because that reduces their time frame, because of the concertina of everything happening. It basically saves a significant amount of work for the auditor, and also, but as part of, as already been alluded to, there will still be a requirement to have an opinion prior to adoption of your LTP. The risk is if you don't get audit to review and have discussion and confirm verbally that your CD is compliant, when you then have your formal audit completed, if you don't have if you have a non-compliant consultation document, your LTP technically is non-compliant. So it's actually giving us council assurance that the consultation document is legally compliant without the formal opinion.
So all of this consideration is directly a result of external organisations failing to, not Carterton District Council being in any way unable to meet timelines, but Audit and QV are putting us in this position. So Jeff, in terms of the process, if we were to formally resolve not to audit the document, what would be required in terms of timeline?
So we would need to make a recommendation from this committee to full council. Full council would need to consider that recommendation and pass a resolution not to have the consultation document audited. So we could do that via an extraordinary general meeting, which we could possibly tack on to Projects and Policy next Wednesday. At the end of Projects and Policy, it would be a meeting with one item on that agenda, which would be to consider the recommendation from Risk and Assurance to not have our consultation document audited. That would probably give us sufficient time for the legislation to pass, which would mean we would be able to make that resolution.
The bottom line is the Auditor General still audits the final.
Correct, absolutely.
So-
Absolutely, yep.
The LTP.
There's no issue.
That's not changing.
And I think signalling, taking such a step is something that we, the Audit and Risk Committee, should consider.
Yep, okay.
But secondly, I guess the thing that I'm not blind to is the double tapping on our timeline through QV and the audit office. And that is what's concerning me. And I think we offset those two risks well by making a formal representation, get it onto the agenda in Parliament, go to Select Committee and make clear our views and put that on notice.
Okay, can we just come back to that? I think the issue is at the moment, well, let's just talk about, and I want to hear from the members of the committee plus also other councillors, and welcome Marty, right, about their views on not having Audit New Zealand give us a formal audit opinion on the CD. Brian.
Thanks, Philip. It concerns me right at the start where Audit New Zealand can't give us a proposal letter yet, with their fees and charges. And the first question is, we should have that first. They've started the job and we haven't got a contract yet. So how do we know how much it's going to cost us? And we don't really know because we've got to decide whether we want a fully audited set of accounts or what. So that's my question.
I mean, again, part of this discussion of the Auditor General 10 days ago, basically they said they won't be issuing an engagement letter until such time as the legislation is passed.
Grace is good.
They also, now I've heard through the grapevine that your LTP audit will be based on your last LTP fee plus 21%, okay, if you don't have a CD audited, and 23% if you do. Now that's through the grapevine. It's disappointing again that we haven't heard from audit. Grace, you've got a comment?
What a scam.
Yeah, I agree with that comment, Dale. It's atrocious that they do the work and then say, here's your bill, and by the way, it's gone up this much again. My question was with regards to the consultation, and I'm concerned, like you're saying, about the CVs not being released. If the submission period closes before people have got their CVs, that's going to really impact what they might have to say about our long-term plan. And I'm just worried, has there ever been a case where that's happened, where there's been consultation and then CVs have been released?
Do you want to talk about people down to the...
Perhaps the chair could answer. It sounds like he knows the answer to that question, Grace.
Well, no, I'm not aware. And this is, to me, it's a legal minefield, right? Because, the rates, this is the real challenge. The rates are required under what is now 22-year legislation and requires you to base your rates on the RID, the Rating Information Database, in May. But if that Rating Information Database hasn't been updated by the current values, and I'm not a lawyer, so please do not take this as legal advice. My simple brain would say that you can actually then use your old values to set the 24-25 rates, but I would recommend that you have discussions with both QV, Valuer General and a rating legal expert to explore those options. Because if QV fail to deliver, and they fail like a number of councils have, because technically it's a council valuation performed by QV and other parties, that if the data's not there, you've got to use the best available information at the time. So, yeah, it puts council in a really invidious situation.
But we can, but Mr.
But
Chair.
sorry.
Go, Grace.
Carry on.
my second part of the question was, I see later on in this paper, it talks about how Minister Simeon Brown has allowed councils to defer their long-term plan by a year if they're concerned with changes to the Three Waters, etc.
Yep.
Is that not something that we could consider in this instance and push it out by a period to make sure that people are getting full information before we submit? I mean, it's a 10-year long-term plan. If we have the ability to push it out, what would be the hesitance of not doing that?
Sorry?
I'm happy to answer if you'd like.
Yeah, I think it's an operational issue, Mr. Chief Executive.
Kia ora, Grace. There's two questions there. Can I take the QV question first? The consultation document will have rating examples based on the current data we've got from quotable value. The long-term plan, we are hoping that QV will have given us updated data. So the rating examples and the long-term plan document that will be adopted towards the end of June will have new data. So we are very conscious that the two sets of rating examples that will go out in the consultation document and the long-term plan will be different because QV will have updated their data, hopefully, in that time frame. They have told us, and we are quite frustrated, that we will not have updated rating information for the consultation document. And that's you are correct, that's a really big risk for our community, because if those values change materially between the two, there will be a material change in the rate impact for those impacted households or businesses or industries. We can't do anything about that because it's QV, but it is definitely a risk that we are going to have to communicate to our community because it could end up with some big swings. So that's the first question. We're just going to have to manage that via comms. Your second question around, yes, the legislation will provide for the ability for us to delay the long-term plan by a year and adopt a long-term plan next year, and we have to have an annual plan this year. The legislation also provides that annual plan must be consulted on. So there is very little difference between having a long-term plan and having an annual plan that must have the infrastructure plan and the asset management plan and be consulted on. So in our opinion, we think it's the right thing to do. We're 80% the way through the long-term plan now, probably closer to 90%. We should just push on and do it. The final piece that you may wish to also consider, it's not something that management would consider, but if we do a long-term plan next year, it will also be the year when the council goes to the polls. So you'll be doing a long-term plan, adopting a long-term plan, and then about a month or two after, the community will go to the polls. Your call as to whether or not you'd like to do that. Yeah. Doesn't sound like a good plan.
Well,
yeah. Mayor Ryan?
Yeah. Look, I want to come back to the QV thing, because the question that looms in my mind is if some of the info that is out there comes to pass and commercial, say for example, commercial property valuations, industrial property valuations were seen to be hitting 69 or 70% increases, how valid would our consultation process be, given the difference between what we're quoting in our consultation document and what we then finally come up and say, oh, by the way, we knew QV was still working on valuations. They finally come in and what we were predicting as your rates increases are now going to be this. I'm just concerned that we will be seen to, and doesn't matter how you run your comms plan, it will be seen by people that we should consult again, because some people will say, given that increase, I now want to express a view on these things that I think you should chop out of your annual plan, because that's a ridiculous increase. So my question is, how valid and what is the risk of us being seen to be deceptive or misleading?
Can I
Sure, you can.
I mean, the issue for me is, right, and this is So again, this is not legal advice, but I've been around a reasonable amount of time. The issue is the problem with the valuation. All it does, it actually doesn't actually alter how much revenue you get. It just alters the allocation between groups. And this is the real tension that people see the LTP and their projects, how it actually impacts their bottom line. Whereas it actually, yes, it does, but what you'll hear from 98% of people whose rates are going to go up because of the revaluation, and you will not hear from anybody or you're unlikely to hear from anyone whose rates are going to go down because of that revaluation, and that's the problem you have.
Pretty basic.
It's
pretty.
Yeah, but it's a political risk from not necessarily. You wouldn't get legally. You couldn't have your rates challenged in the High Court for that process because my rates went up because of the revaluation, and you didn't let me know. Is not a valid excuse for overturning the rates legislation. However, it's a sort of significant political risk in terms of people's perception.
Could I?
Yeah.
Maybe if I could add to it, a change in the QV values won't change the things we consult on. So we're consulting on items that once council agree will be the same regardless of what the QV valuations are. So the roading consultation item, the wastewater consultation item, they won't change, and the overall number won't change. So there's a whole lot that won't change, but you are absolutely correct, Ron, when you say there could be swings within properties, within the community, and that could lead to big questions. And I think all we can do is manage that via our communication. But the overall rates number won't change, the budget won't change, and the items we're consulting on are also not.
But it's not necessarily all we can do, is it? We could decide, we could recommend to council that we set the rates on what we know and just write it, because the danger of waiting and getting a late QV announcement is what we end up changing our rating system halfway through the year. And we change the billing, and how much extra time and work is there in that, and how much cost is there in that, and knowing that what you're striking is set for the entire year will bring some comfort and calm to our ratepayers and ease of work for your management team. But waiting for QV to eventually come out, having to strike a rate, and then having to change it because now we have the new information. What's the risk in there and what's the issues in that?
We're not there yet,
No.
but you are absolutely right. That is a big risk for us, is that the valuations come through late and have a consequential, rather catastrophic downstream effect on council. But we aren't there yet. So I think as we get closer to that period, I think we should come back to council and have this discussion, because it is there are very big downstream consequences for us and our community with that rate data coming through late.
Can I put with significant risk? Any other comments, Marty?
Yeah, I'm not just going to talk about exactly what you just said, because QVs or CVs are only how the rates are allocated, and there could be big changes there, but I would hope that consultation with the community is not just about the impact on their back pocket, that there are a lot of other things that we'll be looking at, and there are a lot of things that influence the rates for particular properties more than just the CVs. It's your whole rating structure, which has changed, and that could have more significant change on impact on people's individual rates. There's the things that they're going to be consulted on, which have been no reality with the CVs, individual property CVs. So there's a lot of stuff to consult on without the individual CVs and the impact. And for every person that says, I don't like this going up, there'll be someone else that will be quite happy for it to go down. So, there are swings and roundabouts in that. What I wondered was if the rates are struck at existing, two things. One, if the rates are struck at the existing CVs, there'd be the option to not change that rating information database until the following year. So I don't think it's necessarily the case that we would want to change or be able to change the rating information database during the year.
No, you can't.
No, you can't. Once it's 1 July is gone, that's it. So you can't do it during the year. So there's no real change, no impact on, from the staff point of view, of the changing that database and changing the rates until the next year anyway, because there are changes year to year. That's the first thing. The second one is I was wondering if we'd be able to have an indication of potential impacts by groups of ratepayers, and that could be reflected in the examples that are in the consultation document and the proposed LTP.
Yeah.
As part of the comment.
Yeah. We do that now with three different differentials.
We do that now.
Yeah, but in terms of which ones you choose and whether you increase it or.
I think,
Yeah, yes.
Aaron, do you want to just respond to because you did talk about the information that was available
Thank you,
from
Chair.
QV.
So our current plan is to use provisional data from QV,
Okay.
the consultation document, because by law you are obliged to use the new valuations for consultation. So QV are sending us through next week a provisional file, and then they've committed to sending us a final file on the 13th of March, so we could then make sure that the final consultation document has the new valuations or the proposed valuations in it. Of course, they won't be audited by the Valuer General until April, but you are required by law to issue a consultation document with new valuations, not with current valuations. So we're aiming to achieve that, and they will be provisional. So that will make the process more robust for when we do the final LTP.
Okay.
Yeah, I was really just following on from Marty's observations. You know, the LTP document is a discussion around the size of the pie, whereas the QV outcomes will be determining how the sizes of the slices. And coming back to Karen's point right at the start is we have no choice but to focus on the things we can influence, and that's the LTP document. And when QV steps up and completes their work, yes, we'll have to communicate that to the people and those who will be affected. But I guess trying to preempt where QV is going to land and try and pull levers to make changes in advance of that coming through is pretty risky in itself.
Yep.
So we've just got to follow the process, concentrate on the LTP and manage the QV inputs when we get them.
Yep. Just final comment on, look, I get what people are saying, and we all know that it's not about the total take, it's about, as Dale says, the pie and how big an individual's particular slice of it is going to be. And I sometimes think that that's a little bit of a minimising statement when you sort of dismiss that. If you consider for a moment that an 83-year-old widower, her pension is $25,000 gross per year. And if you consider the average wage of a person in Carterton District, which is not much higher than that by government stats at about 30K, I think it's actually under 30K. If you're looking at losing $4,000 in rates out of your gross income of $25,000, a severe bump is significant. And so those are things that are in the minds of some. And it wasn't so long ago when we were facing the prospect of J&L unbolting all of its machinery and relocating offshore. And that was, a few years back now. But that risk has never disappeared. And if industrial rates or commercial rates hit a certain point where management of institutional places like that reconsider whether or not they're going to remain in district, it's not an insignificant point. So I do look at the size of the slice of the pie that each sector of our community has to pay. And I worry about what I'm already hearing about the provisional figures that QV are floating around, because they are substantial in the increases. They're not small. So I don't want to be hitting people with a consultation document that says this is where we're going to be. We go through the whole process, we come to the final adoption in June, and suddenly it's all different. It's all different. I'll just leave that there, because that to me is a major risk to the integrity and credibility of the council.
I haven't heard from the three Steves.
If you're talking about the consultation document being audited, I'm happy to go with our chair's suggestion on that, whether we do or we don't. So, apart from the position we're in, I mean, I can't say any more than it's already been said about
Okay, all right, just make,
various departments.
yeah,
Yeah, most of it's been said, I think.
Okay.
And it's like our mayor says, a lot of people on fixed incomes, that's going to worry a lot of people, I think. And also the industrial part of it. There are a lot of industrial people hurting at the moment. A big rates increase wouldn't be good.
okay. Any other comments?
I did understand Karen to say that the consultation document would be based on those numbers that we saw last week.
Some of them, that was a portion.
Yeah.
Sample, yes. So QV have committed to providing a data file on the 13th of March with the provisional data complete.
Because the big swing in there was in terms of industrial values.
Indeed.
The impact of that, oddly, is that if the share of the pie that the industrial landowners need to pay goes up, then the widowers are going to pay a bit less.
Yeah, well, that's
no
that's not a discussion for this committee. It's a discussion for council. Karen, can we just go back to your report on 4.1? We talked about the timetable. So does our discussion today influence that timetable? And is there anything you want to bring to the committee's attention?
Thank you, Chair. I think the current situations we have Audit New Zealand commencing the audit and asking for quite a lot of information this week, and they're coming on site tomorrow to meet with us. They have already asked us if we wish to not have the consultation document audited. With the QV file not coming in until the 13th of March, the current adoption date of the final consultation document on the 20th of March just makes it extremely tight. And I would like to suggest that we move that to the 27th of March, one extra week. And initially that was to also try and accommodate Audit New Zealand in that time frame. So again, external parties having an influence on the outcome by the 20th of March is just a little tight. I'm recommending we still continue with public consultation on the 3rd of April for 30 days, subject to any catastrophic events that might occur. So the current timetable is just a little tight over the next few weeks.
Okay.
And also to be able to bring it back to council in that time frame.
Okay.
And the risks associated with pushing it out a week are?
I'm not actually aware of any. We've checked with, because Rapid Times Age do the final publication, they can accommodate us in that. That is just before Easter. So we can work within that time frame. That allows us to have some time to actually review everything. So there is no risk.
We're concertinaing up the time that we have internally to prepare and produce the final consultation document. But if we also agree to not have audit produce a final opinion on the consultation document, we are releasing up a bit of time. So essentially we're using up some of that time from audit in order to double check the document before it comes out. We believe that we can still go out with the consultation on the 3rd of April, and that will be in line with both Masterton and South Wairarapa, so that we're all consulting at the same time.
Just a point of order. We would, if the sounds like to me there's 2 recommendations that we should resolve now. One of them being that with reduction in final order of the CD extraordinary council meeting be moved from 20 to 27th of March. Is that right?
Yes, yes.
And the second one being that we recommend that we not seek an audited consultation document. Now that's a decision council has.
Absolutely.
So it's a recommendation.
Absolutely. Yes. And
that's right.
the Chief Executive has already alluded to that at the beginning. Yeah. Any other comments on the other side of the table? All right. Now, Mr. Chief Executive, I'm not looking for work, right? At a meeting of a similar committee this week, this discussion was raised and the committee expressed that the Risk and Assurance Committee review the consultation document. And I'm not suggesting, I mean, that to me is, for you, it's just, all you're doing is just adding me into the loop, whether that...
Oh, there is more than you in the committee.
Oh, there's Marty, yeah.
This committee.
It's a committee.
All of us.
The committee, yeah.
Committee.
Yeah. But the council also gets the opportunity to review the CD as well, in terms of the additional...
Why would we want to do that?
No, it's fine.
No, I could solve that by resolving this committee does not review.
Yeah, well, you don't have to. It doesn't. No, that was actually an addition. Right? I'm just saying in case that
satisfied that the council has will
yeah,
review it.
That's right.
The whole of council.
So all I'm saying is that when that's a role for the council, when it, because you're not having the CD is not being audited, you are right. There's additional due diligence on council to make sure you have a compliant CD. Okay, so you would be asking the Chief Executive, right, as part of that, Mr. Chief Executive, can you give us assurance that this is a legally compliant CD, right? Because previously you would have actually had that audit opinion to give you that assurance as a council.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think the issue is there's a number of ways of doing that, right? You could actually have audit not actually present an opinion, but you could actually say, get a statement from them, there's nothing that's been brought to our attention, not a formal opinion, but just have that discussion with Jacques in the meeting, the council meeting, to say that he is, right? He won't say everything's hunky-dory. That's not in their vocabulary. They've been trained to exclude those words.
Which we'll come to in the next.
Yeah, but the issue then is, you could actually say, look, is there any, you've reviewed the data to date, is there anything there that you think is inconsistent or some words to that effect? Is another way of actually dealing with it. We're trying to get assurance to council to minimise that risk.
I mean, the purpose of this report to Risk and Assurance is to highlight the risks imposed upon us by external organisations.
Correct.
And the concertina timeframe that we're trying to work in. I'd be reluctant to introduce another layer imposed upon ourselves just to take up the slack of an overpriced external organisation failing to deliver.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Could I propose a notion, a thought that if this committee resolves to recommends to the whole of council the auditor general proceed with an unaudited consultation document, not have a audited consultation document, recognising that the final will have an audited opinion, I'm pretty confident that the CE would present to council with that paper an opinion as to the process that we would need to follow.
Okay.
And he would take the time between now and then to talk to the chair of the Audit and Risk Committee and maybe formulate a view on what is appropriate and isn't appropriate and advise council so they could make a decision on that recommendation at the time.
Okay.
That be fair? Assume that?
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So, in no further discussion?
No, not really.
So, Mayor Ron is recommending. This is for Robin's benefit as well as the committee's.
Well, I recommend I offer up two recommendations. One, that we recommend to the council that the adoption of the final audited consultation document at the extraordinary council meeting be moved from the 20th of March to the 27th of March.
Okay, it's the first one. Yes.
Needs a seconder.
Yep. No, I think maybe do we take them two together? Sorry.
Probably separately.
Sorry.
Separately.
Just with moving that adoption date, the consultation may have to move a couple of days out because that is that Easter weekend. So between the document being adopted on the 27th of March.
Okay.
There's 2 working days in there.
Yeah. It's not enough time with it being Easter weekend. Sorry.
Can we, I think the resolution is fine. We're not talking about the consultation.
follow-up.
Resolution of the adoption.
Yep.
So that's what I've moved.
You've moved. Do I have a seconder? Deputy Mayor Dale. We take that. Any discussion on that? All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. As against, carried. Your second resolution.
Resolution is recommend that council not seek an audited consultation document. Not seek to gain an audited consultation document.
Yep. And I think your other point that you raised is valid, right? And that the chief executive.
And that the chief executive present a paper to council explaining the consequences and
process.
Assurance.
Well, no, that will go to the special meeting
Yeah.
that we would need to have for council to adopt.
Yep.
That or consider and adopt that recommendation.
Okay.
Which would be in the next week or so.
Slightly confused.
I just think stick to and I think you've picked it up as an action.
You picked up.
I think you're right. An action
Resolution simple and clean.
Okay, all right.
Recommend that council not seek an audited consultation document.
Okay, can I
I suggest a change, that it's not audit, it's consultation document.
Not, okay, yeah. I'll take that.
Yeah.
Audit, it's
Not audit, it's
not
Action doc, yep. And can I suggest, just to add belts and braces, that's consistent with the current, what's it called? Water Services Act repeal bill before Parliament. So it's consistent with this.
Yeah.
So it's actually tying that in because it's only a bill at the moment. So right? Once it's an act, right?
Once it's an act, we can then pass the resolution.
Okay.
That's the resolution.
Yep. Can I also maybe be so bold as actually suggest we also just receive the report as part of that recommendation so we don't have to come back to that as well.
Yep.
So basically the resolution is
recommend that council not
audit
its consultation
document consistent with the Water Services Act repeal bill currently before Parliament. Do I have a seconder?
Yeah, I'll second that again.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Dale, any further discussion and receive the report?
Yeah.
Any further discussion? All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, carried. Thank you.
Do we just need to now, while everybody's here, determine a time for that
special meeting, extraordinary meeting, or is that something you want to put together and come back to us on?
So while we're all here, a little bit of admin, really good idea. Projects and policy is scheduled for next week, 9 till 11. We're thinking that might run slightly shorter if we then have the extraordinary meeting at 10:30 next week, or half an hour between 10:30 and 11.
If it went over, we could push the governance slightly forward.
Okay, so that's the thinking.
So if we could all diarise that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, our next item is the Audit New Zealand report update for our 22-23 annual report. Only how many months late? Anyway, let's not go there. Karen, your report.
Thank you, Chair. So Audit New Zealand have issued their management report in early February. They sent us a draft just before Christmas for comment. I take it the report has been read. They have added 3 new recommendations that are classified as necessary, not urgent. So the good news is there's nothing urgent came out of the audit last year, but just a few more audit points or recommendations. And then I have also included in the report the current what do you call them? Sorry, the current
outstanding
items that were in the report. I have added comment where appropriate, and some of the things have since been addressed and were addressed at time of audit, but obviously they have commented. So we will be working on, certainly the first 3 new audit points have been addressed, and then I will be working with Audit New Zealand later in the year to review these other recommendations which I would have considered closed.
Yep.
So,
okay. Any questions, comments?
I suppose.
Yes, I was to say, Steve.
Sorry.
Steve C.
I just had a couple of questions, Karen. Just that one of the new recommendations, the cost allocation. Are they saying, in not so many words, that we haven't been attributing costs to the correct activity or project as per the LTP? Is that what they're saying?
Good question, given that this is the only indication I have, is I think they're saying that we didn't follow the current model in quite the prescriptive manner that we should have. I don't believe it was material. I just think that we just didn't follow the prescribed model in the LTP. And I also understand that it was done by previous staff who are no longer here. So it was not something we were aware of. It's certainly not a material issue.
And just following on from that question, on page 22, where it says the errors in classification of expenditure and general ledger, is that linked to the cost allocation?
No, not at all. No, that's completely separate. That, I believe, is sometimes people don't know where to code their costs to, so they will sometimes assume an incorrect code. We have electronic purchase orders, which hopefully improve that process, but sometimes people just put stuff to the wrong place.
No.
And it's an internal.
It doesn't materially change the bottom line result.
It doesn't change it at all.
It's just, yeah.
But I'm actually, Mr. Chief Executive, if I can comment on that, I'm furious. Right? I'm grossly unhappy. We raised this with them formally as a committee. We said it's basically it was over printing and stationery. Should have gone to office expenses, or did it go to printing and stationery? Whoop-de-doo, as far as I'm concerned. That was agreed by them, and it's still there. We also agreed, right? Well, I'm getting on my hobby horse, right? And I'm going to put a strong resolution in a minute, that we agreed as a committee that we believe that the Manuka crop was immaterial. As a committee, we accepted the risk, and it's still there. So what the hang are they doing? They're not listening to what the committee is saying. In fact, they're not even here today.
I found it interesting that they pulled us up on the manuka crop, and yet all the discussion is around how carbon farming forestry is valued, and yet nobody wants to even look at that, and yet they're honing in on a manuka crop in Carterton District Council. I mean,
with $50,000.
Yeah.
All right.
And charging 23% more to do the audit.
And be late.
No, 30% more. That's for the LTP. The annual report is even more. Right.
So
You don't normally see me grumpy.
thank you for defending us.
No, it's council.
I have to say I was disappointed in the quality of the recommendations.
Yep.
And I will be meeting with them later this year to try and review them. And I won't bring them back to the next committee meeting because they are what they are until we have a new audit director starting end of March. Karen Young, she's coming out to meet us. Jacques is moving on at the end of March. So this will be something I'll be raising, and it's time that a lot of this was removed. I think it's unnecessary, most of it. Historical.
In your conversations with them, how have they imagined you would value the manuka crop over its life?
Well,
growth.
Unfortunately, Ron, I haven't had any conversations with them. I'm struggling to even connect with them on every point at the moment.
I think what may help, I see Grace has her hand up, Chair.
Yeah, thank you.
What may help is when we review our valuation policy, that we provide for not valuing immaterial or small value items that we have. So the valuation policy says we'll review everything every 3 years. And technically speaking, audit are correct because we haven't followed valuation policy because we haven't done that on the manuka crop. So what we need to do, I think, is potentially just tweak our policy to say we will revalue materially significant items every 3 years, which gives us the option to say we don't consider the manuka crop materially significant.
Okay. Grace.
Hiya. I have a question on page 19, the first page of the audit document, regarding the remuneration bands disclosure. So my question was, does that mean that the figure of roughly $6 million that personnel costs the council each year wasn't including their KiwiSaver contribution? And also, what percentage does council contribute towards? Is it a 3% KiwiSaver contribution? And so what would the actual figure of our staff cost equate to if it didn't include the KiwiSaver?
Thank you, Grace. My understanding is, and Kyra, you can correct me if that we previously did not include KiwiSaver in that number, and then this year audit requested us to include superannuation or KiwiSaver. Do I have that correct, Kyra?
The salary band note didn't have the KiwiSaver in the bands where they sat, but the actual full cost of personnel and the P&L was correct.
Was correct, yeah.
Included all of the personnel costs.
So did you pick that up, Grace?
Yeah, so the personnel figure is correct. It was just within the bands that hadn't been listed.
Yeah. And to answer the second part of your question, I believe it's 4%, Grace.
Thank you for that.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Dale.
Yeah, I highlighted that comment you made on page 17 around disappointment over the new issues. I mean, again, I find that remarkable that it can introduce new issues so late in the piece, and yet none of them are urgent. And yet in the previous item, we were talking about trying to get audit to step up to enable the most important process of this triennium, which is the LTP document, so they can fluff around bringing in late items with no urgency attached to hold us to account. And yet the really important things that influence this council going forward, they're missing in action. I just, I find that a remarkable state of events, frankly.
Right. Grace, is your hand up again? We've just forgotten to put it down. Thank you. Yep. Oh, yeah, sorry.
I suppose, sorry, if I can just, you as the chair, independent chair of Carterton District Council's Risk and Assurance have had this conversation with audit and clearly nothing happened.
No.
What voice do we have to express back to audit that we are the customer, we're paying their exorbitant bill each year. And we expect some level of satisfaction, and they haven't met that threshold.
I concur with your comments, right? So what I'm suggesting, right, is the recommendation is one, we receive the audit's report, one. Two is we express that the chief executive on the committees, I'm happy to draft it for you, right? On the chief executive, because we can't technically do anything, right to audit the executive director of Audit New Zealand and a copy to the Auditor General over the lack of engagement, over the management, express our disappointment over the management letter process for the 22-23 year. Right? Comment.
Look, I know John Ryan, who's the controller in the Auditor General. And I know Andrew McConnell. When's the last time anyone from this council went and had a sit down with them?
It's actually inverse. So Mayor Ron, normally in the Office of the Auditor General and Audit New Zealand come round and visit each council on an 18-month rotation. When was the last time the Auditor General and the Audit Director rocked up and had a discussion?
Regardless of that, I know how easy it is to get an appointment with John.
I've been trying to.
I'm just going to say that we can write all the letters we like, and we can send letters away, but there's nothing better than actually sitting down with people with a letter in your hand and going through it point by point and handing the letter to them so that their official can go away and do some work. I just think sometimes a small council like this can actually get a stronger input just by fronting up and having a chat and then leaving behind a piece of paper that the Auditor General can then delve into. I find them both quite reasonable chaps, actually. But you're dealing through layers and tiers through here. And sometimes you feel like you're shouting at the moon. Well, you are. Go to the moon. Can I just suggest that? And maybe we should ponder that. Because these are serious matters.
So just coming back to that recommendation, does the recommendation need to be that we prepare a letter expressing our dissatisfaction?
Well, we don't. Okay, just on advice, right? From both the chief executive and the mayor, right? All we can do, right? Maybe we can actually just say the committee expresses its dissatisfaction, right? And ask the chief executive to convey our dissatisfaction to the appropriate.
I take the appropriate action.
Right?
Delegation from this team.
Well, that's part of that process. It actually allows a whole lot of things to happen, I think.
Okay. Happy to take that. I am.
Burden you, Jeff.
It's the role. So my feedback would be perhaps I could ask the committee a question, I'm using these words deliberately. My question is: has the committee lost trust and confidence in their auditors?
Has management?
He's asked the committee, all right? I mean,
trust, no. Confidence in. Well, I guess they're making their problem ours too frequently, and we've got enough problems of our own. we're legislative required to follow the audit process. We have expectations that in exchange for the fee, they meet their statutory obligations to enable us to do our job. They are continuing to compromise us, and I think that's unacceptable when we're the customer paying the bill.
Marty?
Yeah, isn't the issue with to be had with Auditor General about the service provider that he's selected to do our audit, and so that's the approach, is that we're not satisfied with the service. It's not a trust and confidence.
No, it's not. It's a service.
It's a service.
I would concur. It's not over. Yeah.
The reason I use those words, Marty, was if we are to change the service provider, i.e. move to an external firm, obviously one of the four, big accounting firms, we need to give the Office of the Auditor General a very good reason as to why we wish to change. And one of the only reasons they will consider is whether or not we no longer have trust or confidence in our auditors to deliver the service to the expectation that we require. And that could be a start for a conversation with the Office of the Auditor General. I would caution the committee insofar as if you do wish to follow through with that, it's highly likely that the fees we would incur from an external accounting firm will be greater than what we are currently paying Audit New Zealand. You would get you'd get a much more responsive service, much more professional service. That would cost.
I don't think we're there in terms of trust and confidence, but I'd be giving them a qualified report.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
I think, Mr. Chair, it's about clarity and it's about just getting a clearer understanding from the Auditor General himself. Are these really the issues that he's concerned about? And
miscoding of stationery.
Yeah, and shrubs. Unaided shrubs.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yes. Oh, look, I agree. Audit New Zealand still, there's no issue over the audit process, right? They're following the standards. Yeah. The issue is it's over their engagement and delivery of key issues. And I would also just caution, right, the chief executive. I've been involved in councils that have actually moved from Audit New Zealand to another provider at the request of the Auditor General. That costs council significant dollars and significant time in terms of teaching commercial people the business of local authorities. I've got two councils that use different one of the big four, right? But they have teams who are experienced in local government and do a really good job. The other ones that are new to the party, the directors have got no idea. And I won't name them because it's not fair, because they need to get up to speed, and that's the challenge, right? And you're damned if you do and damned if you don't.
Did you say at the request of the Auditor?
Correct.
So he said, we don't want to deal with you anymore.
No. So what happened was the Audit New Zealand was having difficulty getting staff. They've probably still got difficulty getting good qualified staff. The Auditor General approached two of the big four and say, can you take on some more TA work? And they go, absolutely. And so they, last minute, like in May, there was a change in auditor from Audit New Zealand to another provider. Okay? Right, and the audit team that was appointed hadn't done a local authority before.
I wasn't recommending a change. I was clarifying the committee's intention.
Yep.
Fair enough.
Good question.
Make it crystal clear what was.
All right. Thank you. Right.
Okay. More to go.
So, any further discussion? Yeah. So we're going to receive the. Oh, sorry. Yeah, Steve.
Karen, I've just got another question just under the wastewater treatment plant information it starts on page 24. And just the changes to project management in the last 18 months. And point 14, I'm just curious, as part of that contract management, are we now including retention on the majority of our projects?
Can I ask Johannes to answer that, please?
Answer for that. Councillor Christie. Yes, so all our contracts include, all our recent contracts in the last 18 months include retention as part of the New standard contract.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So I'm happy to move to receive the report and that the chief executive takes action to express the committee's dissatisfaction, or the board's dissatisfaction, is that the right word? Or disappointment with the timeliness and appropriateness of the management letter. Okay?
From a draft that the chair was going to make.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
He said he'd write it.
Oh, well, yeah, I did. Yeah, I did.
You've
Thank
probably
you.
got one already.
Sorry?
You've probably got one already.
Yeah.
Thank you. Not quite. All right. Happy to take that comment. All right. Do I have a seconder? Deputy Mayor Dale. Any further comments? All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
As against, carried. Thank you, Karen. Next item is our Treasury report. Karen,
You presenting this or?
Karen, it's changing of the guard.
Move along. Action. Thank you.
Morning, everyone. Oh, sorry, my voice is a bit funny today. This is our Treasury report update to the 31 of December. At the moment, it stays in point 4 that we have debt with LGFA of 20 million. We've drawn down 3 million within the current financial year, and we will be drawing down some more for a loan that matures in April. So we'll refinance that. And I've through the current limits that we have. Just sort of thinking if there's anything else of note.
Happy to take questions.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you. All right. Any questions? Marty?
Yeah, a couple of questions. With the Three Waters repeal, the idea of keeping debt short term is going to change in terms of the timeframes. And secondly, the forecast position to June. What information on that?
Can I ask?
You can.
Good question, Marty.
Yeah,
Chair, I see Grace has her hand up as well.
Thank you.
So it was approximately a year ago that we recognised the possibility that either Three Waters would be delayed or repealed entirely. And so since that time, our debt that we've been taking out has been long-term debt. So we haven't been taking short-term debt for at least the last 12 months and continue to take long-term debt from now on. So that answers that question. The forecast position, I will leave to Kara and Karen. I do note that we will have the settlement on the purchase of Matawa Farm, which will also add to our debt position before the end of June. That settles at the 31st of May, and I'm sure Kara remembered that.
Yes, Kara did remember that. Yes, I haven't. We've looked at our debt for the long-term plan I cannot remember that off the top of my head. But yes, I can come back to the committee with that if you require.
Yeah, I guess I'm more thinking about less about what the number is, but more in terms of the process of forecasting, because there's always significant carry forwards and underspend of capital expenditure and so forth. And what are you doing system wise to be able to improve that ability to forecast the year?
So within the planning process, as part of our annual plan, we tried to only put through as much capital works as budget for as much capital works as we were able to achieve. We're on track, slightly under 50% of our CapEx spent to 31 December. So that's a work in progress, but that's one of the things we're doing to mitigate the CapEx carry forwards and non-spending of CapEx budget.
Yeah, because it also has implications for how much you plan in the following year to borrow, and also you're overextending yourself.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Grace?
A question regarding our borrowing limits. It looks like we're significantly well within our own limits as well as the local government advised limits. Is there a way we could be better leveraging or utilising debt to relieve the rates burden in the short term?
LTP discussion.
Yeah.
I'd say that's an LTP discussion. Would be the appropriate time to raise that. Grace, sorry to. No? I
was just thinking within regards to risk and assurance, there's a genuine risk towards reputation that large rates increase. And so I was just wondering how, within a risk and assurance committee capacity, we should be looking at leveraging debt.
You may, absolutely.
Brief answer. Kia ora, Grace. Look, that's a very good question. The majority of debt is from capital projects, and they are from what we refer to as growth projects, so where we're installing new things, new parks, new pipes, etc., or where we are improving the level of service. So we're taking a 200 mil pipe and we're installing a 400 mil pipe. So that would be considered an improvement of level of service, and we would fund that via debt. Where we're finding with our current LTP modelling this time around is a lot of our costs that are increasing tend to be operating costs. So they're things that aren't capital that we can't capitalise using debt. So insurance is a very good example. Our audit fees, which we've just spoke about, increasing either 21, 23 or 30%, depending on which number they choose, are all operating costs, and we're unfortunately unable to capitalise those particular costs, and they do flow directly through into rates. So be rest assured the team are working as hard as we can to leverage debt as much as possible for our capital projects, but unfortunately some of the costs that we're getting and are unable to avoid tend to flow through as OPEX.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Yep.
Sure. Could I ask that you open up to see if any of the other councillors have any questions?
I was also, my questions is always open for, right?
No, normally it's just for the committee, but I'm just asking.
So my mode of operation, right, is always to involve, sorry, my apologies if that wasn't.
Well, I just have a question around the internal borrowings. I mean, that makes perfect sense to me that if you've got a whole bunch of cash in the system that you lend that to yourself rather than borrow it from someone else and pay interest. It's just, there's a comment here that says, including, and the fact that most of the internal borrowings relate to Three Waters assets, whereas I thought we'd had committed all of the reserves that related to the water assets to projects already. So I don't quite understand how those internal borrowings can relate to those assets.
Again, a really great question. I will attempt to answer a complicated back office financial system with simplicity. So the reserves that we hold for Three Waters assets, depreciation reserves, which we can spend on capital projects, and infrastructure reserves that we collect from developments that also we spend on Three Waters projects. They will offset the amount of debt that we would borrow either internally or externally for creating an asset, let's call it a new pipe that we're laying in the ground. So that's the reserves will go towards funding that asset. Now, the question you asked, which is the piece in here, the internal borrowings, once we've spent the money, we can then either borrow externally or internally using our own cash. And that decision happens after we've drawn on the reserve. So the reserve money that is sitting in the balance sheet is used first where we can, and we have utilised all that reserve. Then once we have used that up, we've got a choice of debt borrowing or ratepayer funded. Obviously, debt borrowing, and our first preference is to use our own internal cash. So we, as you said, use our own cash rather than borrowing externally first. Does that answer your question or not quite?
I think so. I think this is put in a slightly confusing way in here. So the internal borrowings, they relate to expenditure for Three Waters assets. It's not because we're borrowing the depreciation reserves that we've already.
That is correct. The internal borrowings could be leveraged against anything. It's just a surplus amount of cash that we have. As you say, it's a whole lot cheaper to use our internal cash rather than borrowing off local government New Zealand. The fact that they are attributed to Three Waters assets is mostly because we've been investing in Three Waters assets over the last few years. If we'd have been investing in roading, they would be attributed to roading because that's what we spend our capital on.
All right. Any other questions? I've actually got, believe it or not, I've got none. Marty beat me to it, just thinking Marty. All right. Good report. We've got a recommendation there that we receive the report, and we note that now we're within our limits. Do I have a mover? I'll move. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Marty. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Carried. Thank you very much. Well done. Next report, 6.4, reform update. Talked about a fair bit of this, haven't we, Mr. Chief Executive?
We've talked about some of the stuff. Yes, you are correct, Chair. So look, I just want to take the report as read. I'll bring a couple of highlights through to you, particularly about the option for deferring our audit on our consultation document, which will become law as part of the repeal. There is another option in there that we had also discussed, the ability to defer our long-term plan, which would become law as part of this repeal bill. We, as management, are not recommending we take up that option. It would extend the time frame that we are dealing with long-term plan until at least June next year, and we don't think that we believe we can get through this long-term plan in the next couple of months, and get it over and done with. On the Resource Management Act, the interesting aspects of it, particularly around the fast track process and the consenting for that fast track process, which will go a long way towards some of the major national infrastructure projects that appear to have been stymied by changes in policy, often at a regional council level. And also the changes within the freshwater management and the hierarchy within the Te Mana o Te Wai obligations are also quite worthy of note. The government's suggested they may make changes to that hierarchy. Given there's only three things in the hierarchy, the changes it's going to be interesting as to how they're going to change those three things. So, happy to take questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Steve?
Thank you, Chair. Jeff, I just had a question around the Resource Management Act and the fast track consent process. Just going down into the bullet points on page 39, I just find it quite concerning when it states referred projects will go to an expert panel which will have limited ability to decline a project once referred. I just think that's these projects getting put through this fast tracking process, the community practically has no say in what happens with them. And then the fast track committee or whoever puts conditions to mitigate any effects of what that project might put on the land. I just find that very concerning that they have limited ability to decline it. I'm not sure what my question is.
So the fast track process, so just to clarify, Deputy Mayor's comment is this isn't a regional planning committee, this is a government-led, so it's a national led process, and it will be a panel appointed by the minister to consider these things. So I think you're potentially seeing a reaction, Councillor Cretney, to projects that have been stopped with paralysed through a number of regional council processes that have allowed claim, counterclaim, escalation, etc. But this is direct from the minister's letter.
Mayor on?
Yeah, just building on that. So I think what we're seeing is an extension, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jeff, the decisions of the last government around the EPA projects, those, particularly the solar farms, which seems to be pretty topical, has energised some people right now. That process has clearly been looked at and amplified and has been picked up in new legislation by this new government. And I think if you go back to the water storage issue, and I know that Irrigation New Zealand have been quite active and talking to ministers, dams like the Ruatani Whā, which were prevented from going ahead. The water storage here, after Wairarapa spent millions of dollars over many, many years doing all that work with the regional council leading, and then the consent was rejected by the regional council. I think these things have become a severe point of frustration to many people, and I guess that's where Labor and took the first step, and now the coalition government's taking a step in its own. So it's not something we can I don't know.
All right, any other comments? Thank you.
If I could just paraphrase Steve's question, I think what he was asking is, what's the point of having an expert panel if you're not going to let it decide anything?
Yes, I think they've answered that. Happy to answer that. So the expert panel, I anticipate, will be looking at how to mitigate the effects of the project. So you would anticipate they're made up of well-experienced commissioners who understand the impact of large infrastructure works on the environment, on the community, etc., and that they will be able to implement mitigations of a project. They once it's through the responsible minister and referred to the committee, I think the decision to no go has been made. The expert panel is there to mitigate the effects of the go decision. That's the way I'm reading this.
You're right.
Yeah, I think I was just going to actually, Jeff's just answered my question, because I think that's what it's all about. It's about a group of experienced people managing the adverse effects.
Yep.
And it's taking the responsibility out of the regional council basically to an expert panel. People that understand
And
district council.
Yep.
Yeah.
For those major projects.
Yeah.
Like, for example, I know of 1 or 2 roading projects in my neck of the woods that have been held up through resource consent processes. Right? And then got kicked for touch by the new government back then prior. Any other questions? Thank you. Thank you, Jeff, for the report. We've got a recommendation that we receive the report. Can I have a mover, please? Steve C, seconded. Deputy Mayor Dale, all those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Carried. Next item, 6.5, our health and safety update.
With your permission, Chair, Jerry is unavailable, and so I am.
Oh, I see you, Jerry. Thank you.
She's on leave at the moment,
Thank
so
you.
I am happy to take the report as read, take questions, and I have expert support
Thank you.
should we need.
Right, okay. Thank you. Any questions? Steve C?
Jeff, I just had a question around the near miss reports. Do we have a little bit more information of those 4 near miss? What were those 4 near miss and that occurred? But also, are there different levels of near miss reports, which how serious the near miss was, which triggers an investigation or a report to come out of it?
We don't have specific levels in our near miss reporting. It generally just depends what it is, and the committee and with Jerry will discuss whether it needs to go further to an investigation or whether we just keep it as following up and making some recommendations and some improvements in that. And the 4 that we've had, 2 were confrontation by members of the public and staff. They're not completely a near miss because something has occurred, but we don't have another category to class them under, so we do put them under a near miss. So we had 2 of those. One, we had one of our staff members driving through a roundabout and a car went straight through, and we avoided a collision, but they put in a near miss report anyway for that. And the other near miss was a valve had come out of the mounting down at the wastewater treatment plant, the water treatment plant, and it hadn't been secured properly and it come out. And no one was hurt and there was no damage with that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Sorry?
Grace.
Oh, Grace, sorry.
Marty.
Yeah, I saw Marty, I didn't see Grace. Thank you. Grace?
You're on mute, Grace.
Hi, I'm sorry. My question was with regards to the recruitment line item. It was talking about how there. Sorry. Oh, sorry. No, it was about the annual leave. Is there a maximum number of days that a staff is able to accrue before we start to request that they have some annual leave taken?
There is no maximum, and under the legislation we can't cap annual leave. What we do is work progressively with staff to make sure they take annual leave, and we've got a handful of staff with very high annual leave balances, and sadly some of those roles are critical to the delivery of our water infrastructure services. So without those staff members being here, particularly over the Christmas New Year period, we have failures on our plant, or we're unable to operate our plant. So what we are trying to do is work with them on slower periods where we've got other staff back on deck for them to take leave. But yeah, it's something that as management we try and work with the team on a regular basis. It can be hard to encourage staff to take leave sometimes.
Okay, thank you.
But no cap.
Marty?
Yeah, I did have a question about recruitment. So 6 people leaving, that's a 10% turnover. Is that going up or down? And is it of any concern?
Yeah, so recruitment generally is harder for a small council, partly because people don't see the career opportunities within a small council that they may within a larger organisation. I'm not particularly concerned about the level of people leaving. They are they're moving on to better opportunities, and I do wish them well. Our challenges really come around replacement. So in some cases, we've had a couple of staff leave in our Parks and Reserves team, and they've moved on to better roles. We're able to replace them through the task force screen. So we bring in task force screen, and they often move up to permanent roles. So in those cases, they're able to be replaced. Where it becomes more difficult is a specialised role. So like a roading manager or a water engineer. They are much harder to replace when we've got a small council, and the opportunities for them to develop through that through our roles are smaller. So we try and balance that by providing other options and wrap around for the work. So work-life balance, our wellbeing strategies, our sick leave policies, our flexible working policies. So we try and balance and encourage staff that way.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions?
Just one. Yeah. We conduct full exit interviews with all of the staff.
We do. Yeah.
So is there a summary without names, but of common themes and reasons? Do you produce when you get a series of exit interviews, do you do a scan or to see what the major issues are, if there are any issues consistent?
I'm not going to answer that question because I don't undertake the exit interviews. Jerry Brooking undertakes the interviews, and they are all confidential. But she will pull together themes, ELT, to consider when she thinks they are necessary. So.
Could we have an overview of what those themes have been over the last 12 months? Because, I mean, this council gets requests into the annual plans, the long-term plans around wages, and often people say that money is the big issue, and that would be an indicator to me if consistently it was I'm leaving because I'm not being paid enough. That would give me solid evidence that supports that view. At the moment, it's just, you know, I'm hearing it, but I don't know it. Because is there like a summary report that's ever produced on personnel?
Can it be done confidentially?
Yeah, without you don't want names. You want themes.
Small numbers.
Yeah, it's numbers.
Yeah, I mean, look,
Numbers are small.
I'm nervous about requesting that information because that's a management issue, right? The issue for me is if there were concerns over people leaving, right? From a governance perspective, I think that needs to be raised with the chief executive, to say are there risks, etc., around that, and how are you managing it? I don't see that. I mean, yes, I understand your theme about money, right? But that's a generic question we can actually be asking the chief executive to say, look, we've had these number. Is there a consistent theme rather than?
I don't agree with you.
Well,
I don't agree with you. I agree. I believe that Audit and Risk has a responsibility to understand fully whatever risks there exist or don't exist. It's nice to eliminate perceptions for a start, and people are leaving because this, that, or whatever. So a report that is devoid of anything that would identify people is, to me, a perfectly valid report to be able to give. The X number of people left over the last 12 months. The theme for reasons were wide and varied, and there is no ongoing systemic issues of note would tell me that. If it said consistently wages was an issue, career prospects were an issue, then council would be in a position to talk to management about how we're going to offset that.
Oh, I don't disagree with that comment, but actually saying is that actually having a formal summary of the report presented to us is probably the inappropriate.
Let's take this offline.
Yeah, absolutely. Mayor So Deputy Mayor Dale.
Well, just following up, and really the confidentiality is the challenge because we're talking, there's so much overlap or interface between staff and governance and such a small number of turnover. You can redact names and situations, but
you'll still always know.
It's not possible to so that would be the challenge in that regard.
How would you get?
Can we take this? I think as we take this offline. Right?
I think we'll take that offline and note that we're taking it offline. For a separate conversation because I just don't understand your objection, Mr. Chair.
It's not it's more of a concern, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. Right. Any other further?
One more. In the report, page 48, it mentions departments being understaffed. Is that a significant issue to be aware of?
So in particular, I know that our Parks and Reserves team have struggled recently. So we've had a couple of staff who have been and at the same time we had a couple of resignations from staff, and so that did create some challenges with understaffing, and as I said previously, we can bring in Task Force Green to support that. It is difficult to manage the understaffing when somebody is quite ill for a long period of time, because we can't really bring in a replacement for some of those roles at times. But I think that was certainly, I know that the comment that was in the report referred to that particular team. You know, one guy had a couple of heart attacks, and another guy was ill particularly, and then we had 2 staff leave. So the staff member who had a heart attack and the one who was ill happened to be both of our really competent digger drivers up at the cemetery. You know, and that made it quite difficult to find a really competent.
And see, Mr. Chairman, one of the things that does concern me, and I see it all the time, is the amount of work and pressure that certain members of the management team and out there in the wider workforce are under. If there was a theme in a report that said, I'm doing too many hours, I just can't keep up with this workload, and I'm going to find, I just need to decompress and I'm find a lower key job. That would be an indicator to support CE in any request for increase in staffing, because and another indicator is, which would support that again, is the heavy stack up and leave owed to people.
Oh, don't disagree. Yeah.
So these things are pluses and minuses and can aid and assist management
trends
if you understand trends.
I think the issue is it's more about what are the trends over employment and what are the risks associated, rather than specifically focusing on, just people leaving. I'd actually be looking at, you might have, and Jeff and Jerry, to me there's probably people at the moment who are stressed to the eyeballs because of the LTP process and the reforms, right? So how do we, right, understand that, Jeff, and help mitigate that from a governance perspective? I think that
was the second area of concern that I do have around short staff, and that is particularly in the finance area. And we're currently covering that through a couple of contractors because of the pressures that we've got on a long-term plan and finance at this stage. So.
Yep.
Okay, any other questions? We've got a recommendation there. We received the report. I don't think we need to amend that. Can I have a mover, please? Mayor Ron, seconded. I'll second. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Thank you. Right, can I have a mover to move into public excluded? Mayor Dale, seconded. Steve C. All those in favour, please.
Speak against this.
Moving into public excluded. Yes. Okay, can I just have, right, I have a move and a seconder. Your reasons for Yep.
Yep. So I think we need to be really careful when we go into public excluded, and the reasons for passing this resolution that are given, I don't think are valid. But I do think there are other reasons that are valid.
Okay.
And that should be the reasons why we go into public excluded. So I'm not speaking against going public excluded, but the reasons that are given. So the first reason given is for section 72B2, prejudicing the commercial position of someone who supplied. Who was that third party? I don't believe there is a third party. That needs to be identified. So I don't think that is there. The other reason, 7.2G, to maintain legal professional privilege, I don't think that legal professional privilege is relevant in this. It's really something which is, we want to protect legal information and so forth, but I don't think there's legal professional privilege involved. If I may move an amendment, is to, instead of those reasons, use section 721, which is around negotiation and is discussed in the next page of the report, but not, yeah, to use 721, negotiation.
Okay. Can I have a seconder for the amendment? Then you may.
Right.
Okay. Do I have a seconder for the amendment?
Yeah, I'll second that.
You'll second it? Okay, thank you. I think we asked the chief executive to explain.
Yeah, I think you get the explanation because it might be an and/or.
Yeah.
It might be an and both.
Thank you.
So to clarify, the commercial position is ours. So it's our commercial position. Necessarily the information we have received, it's of the person who supplied or who is the subject, and we are the subject of that commercial information.
Be covered by 7.2I.
And the legal privilege is the court cases or potential court cases that are proceeding, and I would not support us removing that particular one. We are in dispute, and there are lawyers involved.
Okay. And my reading of the report is that there's nothing in there about legal advice.
Not on this report, but the discussion may end up.
Discussion. It's the discussion. It's a discussion, right? It enables that discussion to bring forward legal arguments.
Yep. Okay.
Right. So we've got a mover.
Just really point of clarification. We're not disputing going into public excluded. We're just trying to be as clear as possible the reasons for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Marty, I would actually support your amendment if the words was, if we could add those words, not replace them with. Okay.
I would second it on that basis.
Yep. I'm happy to
so we'll do it, change the amendment.
Yeah.
So we're adding that reason.
Yes.
That reason for passing resolution
are
include section 7.2I.
Yeah. Okay. All right. As well as, right.
Yeah.
So we've got a move and second for the amendment. All those in favour of the amendment? Aye. Those against? Carried. All right. That becomes a substantive motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against? Carried. Right. We're in public exclusion. We want to take a 2-minute break while Robin stops sharing, or we just